Welcome to Grandma's Tales. Today, we have a very special long journey into the heart of a golden afternoon. A story for those who love the smell of damp earth and the secret language of the woods. Close your eyes and let us visit a place where time moves as slowly as a honeybee in summer. Have you ever wondered what the flowers talk about when the humans are away? Today, a little rabbit named Benjamin will show us that even the smallest heart can hold great bravery. This story is a path that leads away from the busy world and into the quietest corner of a magical garden. It will guide you, step by step, toward a place of absolute safety and deep, restful sleep. One bright, crisp morning, when the dew still clung to the spiderwebs like tiny strings of pearls, a little rabbit sat on a mossy bank. This was Benjamin Bunny. He sat very still by the side of a winding, sandy lane that smelled of pine needles and morning mist. Benjamin was dressed in his finest little brown coat, and his fur was as soft and thick as a velvet cushion. He was listening. The air was so quiet that he could hear the distant buzz of a bumblebee deep inside a foxglove bell. Then he heard it, the rhythmic clip-clop, clip-clop of a pony's hooves coming down the road. A gig was passing by, the wooden wheels crunching softly on the gravel. It was driven by Mr. McGregor, who wore his heavy wooden clogs and a hat that cast a long, sharp shadow over the road. Beside him sat Mrs. McGregor, wearing her best Sunday bonnet. The bonnet was a pale, creamy silk that caught the morning light, making it glow like a fallen cloud. Benjamin watched them until the gig was just a tiny speck of dust in the distance. He knew that when the McGregors left, the great stone wall of their garden became a gateway to a world of wonders. Benjamin reached down and touched a small, cool object at his side. It was a little brass buckle on his left shoe, his favorite totem. Whenever he felt his heart beat a little too fast, he would turn the buckle 3 times. 1, 2, 3. The smooth metal felt like a solid anchor in a world of shifting shadows. He felt a surge of quiet courage. He stood up, shaking the dust from his tail, and hopped down from the mossy bank toward the woods that bordered the McGregor estate. The forest here was a masterpiece of the golden tail style. The sunlight filtered through the heavy branches of the fir trees, creating long, slanted beams of amber light that danced with golden dust particles. The ground was a rich tapestry of russet needles, silver lichen, and deep emerald moss that felt like a thick carpet under his paws. Benjamin loved this path. He stopped for a moment to watch a ladybug crawl across a leaf. The red of its shell was so bright against the green that it looked like a tiny drop of oil paint. He breathed in deeply, smelling the sweet, heavy scent of damp bark and wild violets. He was looking for his cousin, Peter Rabbit. He found him sitting all alone at the edge of a great, ancient fir tree, whose roots twisted into the earth like sleeping dragons. Peter was wrapped in a large red cotton pocket handkerchief, and he looked very small and rather miserable. "Peter," whispered Benjamin, stepping softly over a fallen twig. "What has happened? Why are you sitting here in a handkerchief?" Peter looked up, his dark eyes shimmering with a hint of a tear. He explained that he had lost his beautiful blue coat and his shoes in Mr. McGregor's garden the day before. He had been chased by the giant with the rake, and in his hurry, he had left his clothes behind on a scarecrow. Benjamin patted Peter's shoulder. He felt a wave of cousinly affection. "Do not worry, Peter," he said, his voice as steady as the humming of the trees. "I have seen the McGregors leave in their gig. The garden is ours for the taking. We shall go and fetch your clothes, and perhaps a few treats for your mother as well." Peter's ears, which had been drooping like wilted leaves, suddenly twitched and stood tall. A little spark of hope lit up his face. Benjamin turned his brass buckle once more for luck, and together the two cousins set off toward the high stone wall. When they reached the wall, they climbed to the top and looked down. The garden of Mr. McGregor was a sea of colours, captured in the rich, heavy textures of a classical painting. There were rows of lettuce that looked like ruffled silk ribbons in shades of jade and lime. There were bright orange carrots peeking their heads through the dark, crumbly soil, and the glass of the greenhouse sparkled like a fallen diamond in the sun. Benjamin pointed to a sundial in the middle of a gravel path. Its shadow was a thin, dark line pointing toward the morning. "We must be careful," Benjamin whispered. "When the shadow reaches the edge of that stone, we must be gone." They dropped down into the garden, landing softly on a bed of freshly raked earth. The soil was cool and damp against their paws, smelling of minerals and old rain. They crept along the edge of the brick wall, staying in the deep violet shadows. Benjamin's heart was drumming a soft, steady rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. He looked at the Scarecrow. There, hanging from a wooden crossbar, was Peter's blue coat. The wool was a deep sapphire, and even from a distance they could see the golden buttons catching the light. As they reached the Scarecrow, Peter began to tremble. To him, the wooden figure looked like a ghost of Mr. McGregor. But Benjamin reached out and touched the blue fabric. It felt rough and warm from the sun. "See, Peter, it is just a coat," Benjamin said. He helped Peter pull the coat down and slide his arms into the sleeves. As Peter fastened the buttons, he seemed to grow taller. The blue of the coat matched the sky above, and the fear began to melt away from his heart, replaced by the warmth of being whole again. "Now," said Benjamin, looking around at the bounty of the garden, "we cannot leave empty-handed. My father always says that a journey to a garden should end with a gift." They walked to the onion bed, where the heavy purple bulbs were half buried in the earth like buried treasure. The scent of the onions was sharp and spicy, cutting through the sweet perfume of the nearby roses. Benjamin spread out the red handkerchief and began to fill it with the finest onions he could find. He chose them carefully, feeling their smooth, papery skins and their solid weight. The garden was so peaceful. A robin landed on a nearby spade, its red breast a vibrant splash of colour against the weathered wood. It sang a short, liquid song that sounded like falling water. Benjamin noticed how the light was changing. The bright yellow of the morning was turning into a deeper, richer gold. The shadows of the pear trees were stretching out like long, dark fingers across the grass. The ticking clock of the sun was moving, and the shadow on the sundial had moved past the first marking. They walked toward the potting shed, Benjamin carrying the heavy bundle of onions over his shoulder. He felt strong and capable. He looked at Peter, who was nibbling on a leaf of lettuce, his nose twitching in rhythm with his chewing. The garden felt like a world made of glass and gold, beautiful and fragile. They passed a row of terracotta pots, each one a deep burnt sienna colour, stacked neatly against the shed. The air inside the shed smelled of dry seeds and old clay. Suddenly Benjamin stopped. The robin flew away with a sharp cry of alarm. The air, which had been filled with the sound of insects, went completely silent. Benjamin felt the fur on his neck rise. He looked toward the corner of the stone steps. There, sitting in a patch of sunlight, was a cat. She was a large orange tabby with fur that looked like flickering embers. Her eyes were closed, and her tail was curled tightly around her paws, but she was blocking their only way out. Peter dropped his lettuce. His breath came in short, jagged gasps. He looked at the cat, then at the high wall, then back at Benjamin. But Benjamin did not panic. He felt for his brass buckle and turned it. 1, 2, 3. He remembered his father's stories about how to stay invisible. He saw a large wicker basket lying on its side near the wall. "Under here, Peter," he hissed. They scrambled under the basket just as the cat opened one green slit-like eye and stretched a long, white-clawed paw. Inside the basket, it was dark and smelled of old willow and dried grass. The light came through the gaps in the weaving in thin golden needles, striping their fur with light and shadow. They sat perfectly still. Benjamin could hear the sound of Peter's heart, a tiny, rapid drum. He reached out and held Peter's paw, his own grip firm and steady. Outside, they heard the patter-patter of the cat's feet as she walked across the top of the basket. The wicker creaked under her weight. Time seemed to stretch and expand. In the darkness of the basket, Benjamin thought about the burrow, the warmth of the fire, and the safety of his mother's voice. He realized that bravery wasn't about not being afraid. It was about staying still when your heart wanted to run. He focused on his breathing, in and out, in and out. The air in the garden was turning cooler now, the scent of the onions in the handkerchief becoming more pungent in the enclosed space. Suddenly there was a sound, not a soft cat's paw, but a heavy, deliberate step on the gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was the sound of someone who owned the ground they walked upon. A shadow fell over the basket, and a strong, furry hand reached down. With a sudden movement, the basket was flipped over. Standing there, bathed in the orange light of the setting sun, was old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. He looked magnificent, his fur a grizzled grey and his eyes full of fire. Old Mr. Benjamin did not say a word to the cat. He simply walked over, picked her up by the scruff of her neck, and tossed her into the greenhouse, locking the door with a firm, metallic clack. The cat looked quite surprised behind the glass. Then the elder rabbit turned to the two youngsters. He took a switch of willow from his pocket and gave them a small, symbolic tap on their shoulders, a reminder of the rules they had broken, before taking the bundle of onions himself. "Home," he said, his voice deep and resonant like the low notes of an organ. The walk back to the woods was a journey through a changing world. The sky was no longer gold, but a deep, bruised purple and burning crimson. The sun was a glowing ember on the horizon, casting the longest shadows of the day. The trees of the forest seemed to lean in toward them, their leaves whispering secrets in the evening breeze. Benjamin felt the cool air on his face, washing away the tension of the garden. He looked at the woods and saw them not as a place of danger, but as a vast, welcoming cathedral of shadow. They reached the great fir tree just as the first stars began to pierce through the indigo sky. The stars looked like tiny glowing dust particles, much like the ones Benjamin had seen in the sunbeams. At the entrance to the burrow, Peter's mother was waiting. She was worried, but when she saw them, her face softened into a smile as warm as a wool blanket. She took the onions and thanked old Mr. Benjamin, then ushered the little rabbits inside. The burrow was the very definition of peace. A small fire crackled in the hearth, throwing flickering orange light against the sandy walls. The air smelled of chamomile tea and toasted oats. Peter and Benjamin sat on a soft pile of moss, their tired legs finally resting. Mrs. Rabbit brought them each a bowl of warm milk with a drop of honey. The sweetness coated Benjamin's tongue, and he felt a wave of sleepiness wash over him, starting from his toes and moving all the way up to his long, soft ears. Benjamin reached into his pocket and felt his brass buckle one last time. It was warm now, holding the heat of his body. He realized he didn't need to turn it anymore. He was home. Outside, the wind moved through the pine needles, making a sound like the distant sea. The garden was a far-off dream, and the cat was just a shadow in the past. Here, in the heart of the earth, there was only the rhythmic breathing of his family and the steady, quiet pulse of the night. The world has folded its wings. The flowers have closed their petals, and the sun has gone to sleep beneath the hills. You are safe, little one. You are tucked away in a world of softness and light. Let the story carry you now, like a leaf on a calm river, into the deep blue silence of sleep. The stars are your guardians, and the moon is your nightlight. The end. Thank you for spending this long, golden afternoon with Grandma's Tales. For more audiobooks for preschoolers or 3-year-olds designed to bring peace to your home, stay on our channel. Sleep well, little rabbit. Sleep well.